Thank you. My name is Andrew Castanuela, but most people call me Cass, and you'll probably see that on the ballot. I say Andrew Cass Castanuela, and the reason being because my drill instructor couldn't remember how to say Castanuela, so he said, hey, Cass. So it's been stuck with me forever since. Let me go ahead and apologize to you if my dress may offend you because I'm not wearing a suit and tie, but I think it's important that if you were going to evaluate me, you understand exactly where I come from and what I represent. I'm from West Texas, which is to basically say that we wear a lot of boots, at least out there, because there's a lot of dirt and grime and wind. So these are our work clothes. This is how we kind of do things. So my apologies to anybody in case my dress is it. And just to quickly summarize the concept that I'm in this race only for one reason only, and that is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I believe that totally to my heart. Thank you.
Okay, hang on to the microphone. We'll get started. You can use that to reply with the questions. These first series of questions will be a 2-minute response. They'll be on the board here if you'd care to watch what the question is going to be. This first one, for a long time, Congress and many presidents and courts have ignored or circumvented the Constitution. If you're elected, how will you stop this abuse, and will you do anything to reverse past violations?
2 minutes? Okay. That's absolutely correct. And I look at it from this perspective. You know, I was asked about a week ago, I said, if you were appointed to the United States Senate, how would you appoint your Supreme Court or vote for a Supreme Court justice? And my response was this. The first question I would ask a nominee is say, can you tell me in the Constitution where it states that the Supreme Court can make law? And if they can't find it, then they understand that the Supreme Court does not legislate. They interpret and they rule whether something's constitutional or unconstitutional. And what we have seen lately is the fact that the courts themselves have started to legislate from the bench, and we're using precedents. What I plan to do is, number one, is a Supreme Court justice is not going to be nominated unless they understand that the Constitution states that they do not have the power to legislate from the bench. The second thing is that we're going to have to look at these rules that they or opinions that they make and understand that those are not laws. For instance, if we look at Roe versus Wade, for instance, you know, when a Supreme Court justice or a court rules on that, they give an opinion. And an opinion basically means their interpretation of the Constitution. My biggest argument is the fact that the Constitution is not made to be interpreted. It is what it is. You read it, whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional. I'm going to fight everything I can to make sure that court rulings are not promulgated into law. That's my position.
Okay, question number 2. This is also a 2-minute response. Elected officials seem to have a compelling desire to tweak the capitalistic economy to make it better and fairer for everyone. They only make it worse, with the lower income citizens suffering more because of the tweaking. What can be done to let the free enterprise capitalistic system work as intended, allowing all to benefit according to their individual abilities?
Tax reform. It's plain and simple. The tax reform will end up basically saying is that if we can get to a point that we eliminate the current tax system that we use to judge whether an economic or capitalism or free market works, is what we're going to have to do. We have to eliminate the IRS, and we got to go to either a fair or a flat tax. Now, me personally, right now, I'm a flat tax kind of guy, and the flat tax that I anticipate is that if you make $36,000 or less, you pay 10%. If you make 36 to 125, you're going to pay 15%. If you make more than 125, you're going to pay 20%. You eliminate every other tax, from alternative minimum tax to estate tax to capital gains tax for individuals. Corporations, 25% capital gains tax, and that's it. If we do this, we have what I call a static revenue of taxes coming in. And that's the problem we have right now with our current tax system, is that we have a dynamic revenue base, which is basically dependent on What is sold or what is manufactured will determine how much revenue we got coming in. By going to a straight flat tax, or even I'm open up to the argument of a fair tax, is that we're able to say, all right, this is how much money you're going to get, and that's it. Give people the opportunity to make their own money without being taxed. That's my biggest concern, is that, you know, if I put $100,000, not that I have $100,000, but if I put $100,000 into an IRA, or if I put it into a stock, I have to be careful that I don't get taxed. And it's kind of like going back to what George Bush had said, it's your money. You should be able to invest it what you want. By corporations being able to retain their profit, they're able to go ahead and decide what they want to do. Right now, small businesses have to be careful not to make too much money, or they go into another tax bracket. And that's how I think we're going to bring capitalism, or free capitalism, back to the United States.
Okay, this next question is also 2 minutes. We are able to advance it. Good. Why should U.S. citizens be required by force through taxation to pay for the health care, education, incarceration, and housing of persons who entered the country illegally?
Well, they should not have to be paid, to be honest with you. The Constitution governs American citizens. And those American citizens are the ones that are entitled to the benefits, because they're the ones who pay into the system. Now, in reference to illegal aliens benefiting from these programs, I have a hard time with that. And I can give a personal experience. When I was stationed in Japan, if I went off American soil or the base, I had to comply with Japanese law. One of the biggest things they did was everybody's a professional driver in Japan. If you have an accident, it doesn't make a difference who was at fault. 50% was crowded across the board. This is the Japanese law. No more than any other country has their own laws. What we need to do is we need to get to the point that we start eliminating some of these benefits for individuals who are here illegally. Now, I know that's probably not what some constituents may like, but the reality is that we cannot afford to continue this current path with our debt ceiling and our debt. So we're going to have to curtail some of these because, you know, from the perspective of, for instance, like Medicaid. And Medicaid alone, when I'm not campaigning, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. And a lot of the clients that I have are going to be on Medicaid, or they're going to be on some other program or some other assistance. And some of those individuals may be illegal. And one of the questions that we get to ask in that process is saying, hey, are you an American citizen? And they could tell me no, or yes, or most likely no. I can't do anything about it. And we're going to provide for my service, which costs $1,127 to do my outpatient counseling for one individual, 14 sessions, is going to be paid by the state of Texas. We need to start controlling some of those costs. Thank you.
Okay, question number 4 is also a 2-minute response. America was clearly founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs, yet today we see a constant assault on those beliefs. We also see a politically correct approach to the Islamic faith, refusing to speak to the truth of its beliefs. What can be done to level the playing field?
You know, when we talk about separation of church and state, and you do your research, you find out that it's not in the Constitution or written in that perspective. It was actually with the Treaty of Tripoli. And what was going on at that time was basically at Tripoli, the Islamics at that time with the United States saying, are you going to be a Christian nation, or are you going to be a republic? And what ended up happening was at that time the deal that was made is saying, okay, we do not have an organized faith, and there's a reason for that. The United States has a right to practice their free religion, and it was founded on Judeo-Christian philosophy or concepts. But in the perspective of trying to say that all individuals are equally, is to say that we have to condone one or the other. The argument or the concern I have is whenever you choose one individual, wherever the court rules in one individual, it's also segregating against the other. So if they rule in favor that, okay, the Islamists have the right to go ahead and be free religion, well, you're also telling the other religions that they don't have that right when you go into court. To battle that or to make that somewhat fair, we have to get to the process saying that our job as American citizens is to remember, for me, is that we were founded on God. And God gave us 10 commandments. And those 10 commandments guide our moral principle. And if we cannot understand that as individuals, then we have lost our moral character. So for us, or for me, I should say, is that using the 10 commandments as the guiding post to define our moral character as well as our decisions, that will provide us from the perspective of how things should be done. Thank you.
Okay, number 5, 2-minute response. Our porous borders are a cultural, financial, and security threat to our country. All elected officials talk of securing the borders, yet nothing significant gets done. And I'll read this again because it's not there. If elected, what would you do to force the president to honor his obligation to secure our borders?
This is probably the one issue, as me personally, is going to be the one campaign thing for me. And the reason being is because being of Hispanic, or more specifically, of Mexican-American heritage, they're looking at me to say, okay, what are you going to do to address the immigration issue? Well, number one, constitutionally, we look at that only Congress can legislate according to Article 1, Section 8. They do the laws in reference to naturalization. And in that process, they go ahead and make the laws regarding immigration. What we have to do as I say, congressmen, senators, as well as the House of Representatives, is that we manage the policies and procedures that are created by the bureaucratic agencies. And I'll give you an example. For instance, tobacco was a cash product at one point in our history. And when it was a cash product, you paid with tobacco. Well, whenever the FDA and the FTA decided to go ahead and say, look, we want to put warning signs on cigarette packages, they went ahead and did it without congressional approval. What did Congress do? They yanked them back, said, you do not have the authority to do such a thing. That is the same concept that we need to be actively participated between senators and congressmen, is the fact of saying, just because we pass this legislation does not give you the authority if you rule against what our intent was. We have to manage those laws that are, or I should say, policies and regulations that the bureaucratic agencies are doing, and by doing that, you're saying, I'm going to take away either your funding or I'm going to rewrite the legislation to reflect exactly what we, the House of Congress, passed. And if the president, by enacting his executive order, by being able to go ahead and make policy and procedures through his agencies, we go ahead and rewrite and overwrite the president by rewriting the legislation. Thank you.
Okay, these next 2 questions will be 30-second responses. The first one, should every bill passed by the Senate contain a reference to the Constitution that justifies its constitutionality?
Yes. Plain and simple. Yes. In fact, Bonner had put that, when the 2020 elections happened, that was one of the things he brought up. He said every legislation goes before Congress. It said it should cite where in the Constitution it says that they have the authority to do so. I totally agree. It should be constitutional before you go to any other legislation.
Okay, question number 2 of the 30-second response. Based on recent events in Washington, will you support any action that increases the national debt?
No. And I apologize if I'm pretty blunt, but these are pretty easy questions. You know, you can't sustain yourself in reference to if you want to be a leader in the economy world or a leader in this economic world if you do not start taking care of your business. So no, I will not support that significant raise.
Okay, this next question will be a personal question directed at you, and it's a 2-minute response. You've chosen to champion the 10th Amendment. Why did you choose that one? I'm sorry, I apologize. In interviews, you've said that your first priority, if elected, will be to reform the tax system. Exactly what would you do, and in what sequence would you do it?
Well, the first thing is that, and it's most commonly discussed, and that is you have to go ahead and appeal the income tax. If you're going to put a fair tax or a flat tax on the table, you got to go ahead and start reforming that amendment or appealing that amendment, which goes back to the concept of saying that we need a simplified tax code system, whether that's the fair tax or the flat tax, But the current tax system is prohibiting innovation and entrepreneurship in small businesses, big businesses, and individuals who want to go ahead and seek their opportunities to go ahead and seek their prosperity, so to speak. So the first thing is you have to start mustering up enough elected officials saying, look, we got elected because people are tired of the tax system, and we need to do something to change it. So you get yourself a bill on the floor and say, look, this is what we're going to do. And you present it on the floor and present it to the speaker or to the president of the Senate. And you start that process. The next thing we're going to have to do, in reference, going back to the tax system, is we're going to have to reform a lot of our spending and a lot of our entitlements. And that's going to have to mean we repeal the Social Security Act of 1965, which basically says, under President Johnson, put the Social Security funds back in their own trust funds instead of general revenue. These are some of the things we're going to look at in reference to start taking care of our revenue-based system. It's all based on the concept that it takes, bluntly, money to make the world go around. Well, it also takes money to run the government. And the less they have, the less power they have.
Okay, thank you for your responses. And now you've got a 2-minute summarization. Thank you.
My friends, I'm standing before you because of what I believe in. You know, earlier when we were up here and we were saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and wonderful job, by the way, with the national anthem, it reminds us that in order to be a true patriot, you have to do something. A lot of people practice, or preach, I should say, about liberty. You can't preach about liberty. Our patriots who founded this country didn't preach about liberty. They practiced it. And that's where we're at right now. The reason the Tea Party, and as well as every organization, is being active right now is because we want our nation to be back to a republic. We are not a democracy, my friends. We are not intended to be a democracy. We are a republic, which basically means we elect our representatives, and we fire them and we hire them. And that's why I'm active within the process. I am not a rich man. I make 60 grand a year. I'm putting 2 girls through college, as well as myself finishing up my graduate degree. I pay my bills, and it ticks me off every time the gas prices keep on going up. If you want to be a part of an American citizen, you must understand first and foremost, it's not easy. To be an American citizen means you have to be active. You got to get involved, and you can't sit on the sidelines anymore like we have been for the past few decades. It is time to make a difference, and that's what brings me to the Senate race. I appreciate you listening to me. It's been a real pleasure. I'm not your normal candidate, but that's okay. I like who I am. Thank you, and God bless you.